Of course, this is going to be a make or break budget for this government, a whole list of expectations. Prasenjit, would you like to come in here on the...
So there seems to be almost a given that quite a lot of the budget will be framed in terms of the Make in India or the revival of manufacturing.
Yeah.
Now, we have already had some discussion on that. So far it's been, and Lavish put it well, that so far it has been in generalities. So what exactly are going to be the specifics that you expect in Make in India, or what is needed in Make in India for it to be very specific, especially since Raghuram Rajan also is saying that, look, it should be Make in India for the world, or
Actually,
Make for India.
Yeah, let's begin with what does Make in India mean? And let's start with Dr. Ranade over there. Dr. Ranade, how are you interpreting this aggressive Make in India campaign that the government has unleashed? It's almost reminiscent of Incredible India and God's own country in Kerala.
I think the Make in India is best exemplified by the Prime Minister's own mention in his Independence Day speech, and he again reiterated it during the Obama trip, that Make in India, he wants it to be converted into improving the ease of doing business in India. In fact, he said that we would like, the vision is to get India into the top 50 ranks. Now, if you look at the ease of doing business, you can think of 10 metrics, and these are well defined, including things like taxation is one of them, and contract enforcement, and so on. Half of those factors, or more than half of the factors, are actually in the domain of the state government. So Make in India is the slogan which should be translated as Make India Competitive. So reduce the burden that's there, reduce the factors that constrain ease of doing business in India. Remember, this is also the party, I mean the BJP in its manifesto introduced a term called tax terrorism. So reduce this adversarial relationship between the tax collector and the taxpayer. The recent decision to let go of not appealing for the Vodafone case, they lost in High Court and they could technically go all the way to the Supreme Court, shows that there is a change in mindset in terms of this tax terrorism. Remember, there's something like 3 to 4 lakh crores locked up in disputes, and this is what is called fruitless litigation.
Yeah.
So about Make in India is basically to move away from Inspector Raj to a more self-compliance, self-declaration Raj.
Dr. Ranade, hold your thought. Let me bring Lavish in here because he has a flight to catch. Lavish, what does it look like? It all looks very good on paper that we have to, ease regulatory compliance. But when you speak to businesses, they really struggle dealing with bureaucracy, and that's probably going to be the biggest challenge for this government to make in India happen.
So I think we are just paying a bit too much emphasis to that problem about business houses and the problems they have dealing with the bureaucracy. This is something that this government will be very, very good at. Tightening of the whole time taken, the inefficiency routine in the bureaucracy is something that Mr. Modi has been quite good at in Gujarat, and he seems to be doing that in Delhi as well. But I don't think that is the focus of the problem. And I do not think that just one budget is the biggest thing that this government will have to offer, because I think this government has already shown the door, as Dr. Balla was saying. Small and incessant reforms consistently across many weeks, months, days, years, and so on. That's what they're going to do. But the question for this particular budget is, what is the direction that we are going to see? Because till now, as I've also just mentioned before, it is words. You have to figure out ways of institution creation, and what are the institutions we are creating. The Niti Aayog is still a huge question mark, even though it has been set up. What is it going to be doing? How are these legal reforms going to happen? Just a few phone calls to bureaucrats is not going to take India to over the next 10 or 20 years. So having said that, which may sound a bit negative, but this government, I believe, does have a much longer vision than either the Vajpayee government or the following UPA government. I think Mr. Modi and his team do have a 10 or 20-year agenda. So the question is, how are they going to get this agenda in place? Is it all going to be personal phone calls to bureaucracy? I think that's something that I'm really looking forward to this thing. The second part is this: I think we are playing this down quite a bit. The problem of Make in India, or rather the problem of manufacturing in India, has not been something that the government can take care of by passing one or two laws. It's totally systemic. It starts from power, it's with Inspector Rajas at the state and even local level, the whole range of affairs. You cannot do it by big bang reforms. And small reforms cannot be driven by the Prime Minister. So again, you go back to what is this whole center-state interaction that we are going to do. And I think this budget is critical for just setting the direction. It will not be able to achieve too much beyond handling some of the fisc issues.
Sure. So setting the direction, Rhythm Desai, would you like to come in here? What kind of a direction are we hoping to get from the government? Again, we are going to focus on Make in India because there is a huge amount of investor interest in the country, but what will it take for us to bring the money in?
In fact, you pointed out that, that capital, you don't expect the private sector to jump in immediately. To a large extent, of course, because of the balance sheets and all, but any other reasons apart from the stressed?
So, yeah, let me just dwell for a few moments on the global backdrop here. I think the world has got a serious medium-term challenge. If you look at the 3 Ds, if you look at the level of debt, it is very high and rising in most parts of the world, China, Japan, Europe, and even the US. Most of these large trading blocs are faced with the prospects of deflation, and their central banks are trying hard to fight that. And they also have aging problems, probably with the exception of the US, aging population. India is actually at the opposite end of this spectrum. It doesn't have that much debt, maybe a few private balance sheets, but really on the aggregate basis there isn't that much as the rest of the world has. We certainly don't have a demographic problem, and we are not dealing with deflation. So I think that sets India apart from a medium-term perspective. So when I talk to investors, both institutional investors as well as corporate investors, they are all hungry to actually come and invest in India. We don't have a problem from that perspective at all. But they're also frightened of setting up greenfield projects. So what you see normally in India is that foreign institutional portfolio investors do not hesitate buying stocks. Companies, multinational companies do not hesitate buying existing businesses. But companies abroad are not so comfortable setting up businesses from scratch. And I think that seems to be the thrust of the government, which is to change that anchoring, that India is not such a difficult place to actually come and start a greenfield project. I don't think that can be achieved in 3 months or 6 months. It's a very deep anchoring which has developed over a few years, and it will take some time to unwind that. And successive actions, small ones and large ones from the government, like Dr. Ranade pointed out, the government letting go on the Vodafone tax thing, or other such actions that the government has taken more recently, I think will send incremental messages out there which will then accumulate and will de-anchor investors towards India from a greenfield perspective. In the meanwhile, I think the government needs to build capital stock. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Dholakia spoke about that, which is we need to boost our infrastructure in order to make ourselves more competitive. And while you do that simultaneously, the investor abroad gets de-anchored. I think Make in India will be a fairly successful project, at least from the perspective of supplying manufactured goods to what seems to be the fastest growing marketplace in the world. Whether India starts exporting in a large way abroad, I think that's still up for debate, because the world may not be ready for another China-style capacity creation, given the amount of excess capacity out there. So I think that is where I see this philosophically.